Good day, beautiful soul family, and welcome back to On Another Level. And so, beautiful soul family, this is a video that I think is truly important. You know, it's so interesting during this time frame. I would liken this to another dark ages, and any age where we are not relying on God the Almighty, turning to the Bible, turning to God, and walking in the path of light. That's the time of the dark ages, okay? Now, I like to stay informed, and I love watching documentaries, and I was looking into different civilizations remnant from the past. And there has been a major mystery as to how these civilizations have formed up, in reference to the Mayan and the Egyptian, and especially their how they are established and their foundations. And it's so interesting because in each age, or in each era, really, we are seeing how there has been advancements. And the more that archaeologists come up with these different findings, it is debunking the myth, you know, that we have increased our advancements over time. And still there are some things that remain to be a mystery. What I see, what God shows me, especially in looking at the different findings in these different eras and their civilizations, and how they were formed, and their functions, you know, and I see a cycle, a loop of repetition. Now, what's so amazing is that as we look at these different artifacts, we realize that they did space travel. Matter of fact, they were very advanced. And then there's questions of, well, where did they get this knowledge from? As I watch these documentaries, we see the rise, especially with the pyramids, and the question is as well, how did all this come together in dealing with the equipment that we have now and the equipment that they had then? Some scientists, some archaeologists, some historians were thinking that throughout time we're getting better. But as I look at it, I feel like maybe we're just repeating ourselves, relying on a certain type of technology, trying to move ahead, but edging out God. And what I saw with these different civilizations is whenever they edge out God, no matter how much work and energy whoever they're collaborating with, it just doesn't stand the test of time. Okay? And it just goes to show that whenever you edge God out, you don't truly have success. And we really need to come to understand that whenever we edge God out and we put all energy, you see what's so interesting, as mentioned in other videos, and just looking at the observance of life, God gives us the air that we breathe, the sun and the moon and the stars, the water, all that we see that's animate and inanimate. It's really by grace and mercy. And as we look in history, and as God is showing me, there's a loop where you think you're moving ahead, but you're not moving ahead. Because we're doing the same things. It's repetition. And it's one thing where you repeat something that is good. But it's another thing when you are caught up in a loop and you're constantly on this Ferris wheel or hamster wheel where you think you're going somewhere. It doesn't matter how fast you go. You're still caught up in a loop. And each era tries to go a little further. But the ending result is annihilation. And for some reason, that's a mist. Whenever we edge God out, there is no success. Okay? And so, in this video, God was just showing me different things about, really, what are abominations? And this is not a full-fledged video on what abominations are, but it gives us a taste of it. And I encourage you to look into the Bible. There are different scriptures that speaks about abominations. But in reference to this time frame, I would like to talk about Deuteronomy 22 verse 5 and Jeremiah chapter 30 verse 6 and 7. But let's find out, abominations. So with the word abominations, okay, we have ab. Ab means away from. Ami in Hebrew means pleasantness. And then we have nations. So then away from pleasantness is what's considered abominations. The dictionary term for abominations is a thing that causes disgust or hatred. And it was so interesting. God is just showing me that we have the one word abominations, but there's two different views of it. See, interesting enough, abominations, let's turn to it, because God is telling me to turn to Revelations. Let me hold on to this. Revelation. Actually, let me go to this Bible. Alright, so we go into Revelations. And we're going to the witnesses. And the reason why we're going to the witnesses is because he states something there. Okay, so here to speak about the two witnesses, Revelations chapter 11. Okay, but I want to dive through this. Let's start with verse 7. Chapter 11, verse 7. Okay? So here it says, when they finish their testimony, the beast that comes up out of the abyss will make war on them, conquer them, and kill them. Now verse 8, their bodies will lie in the main street of the great city, which figuratively is called Sodom and Egypt. Now, in reference to this, I of course do my personal Bible study, and here in these scriptures that I will be getting into, it talks about the abominations of Sodom and the abominations of Egypt. And what's so interesting is that Sodom was in connection to Gomorrah. But here we see Sodom is now in connection to Egypt. So it's Sodom and Egypt, where also their Lord was crucified. And some of the people's tribes, languages, and nations will view their bodies for 3.5 days and not permit their bodies to be put into a tomb. Can you imagine? Now this says 3.5 days. But as we see with the calculations in terms of God the Almighty, it's longer. They will not be put into a tomb. Now when I think about that, God is telling me, you know what? When Yeshua paid the ransom with his life, and they brought his body down, they put his body in a tomb, right? But see here, they have made an account to not do such a thing, to not give honor and respect to the witnesses. Now let's see. Those who live on the earth will gloat over them and celebrate and send gifts to one another, because these two prophets had tormented those It's about, really, it's about legacy. Legacy is important because you're carrying on an inheritance. And the humanity's inheritance is about filling and So I'm going for Jeremiah 4:1. You see, what's so interesting about kings and queens is that it's very much about legacy, very much about tomorrow, and inheritance, and passing the torch that is well lit. But it seems like we're dampening out that fire. Jeremiah 4:1. The Divine Spirit is telling me that when people are going so hard in changing a person's DNA, they're putting an end to what makes them special. 4:1 reads, "If you return Israel, this is the Lord's declaration, you will return to me. If you remove your abhorrent idols from your presence and do not waver." It's about loyalty. When we destroy idols, destroy things that we put on a pedestal, really, it's like it's a cause and effect. Because you tear down idols, you are actually moving towards me. But when you embrace abominations and the plan of the world, you're forming more and more of a wedge. How do we get closer to God? You take away those idols. You don't put things on pedestals. You give honor, glory, and praise to God. Ezekiel. Let's go to Ezekiel 33. '29. And it reads, "They will know that I am the Lord when I make the land a desolate waste because of all the detestable acts they have committed." Now you may say, wow, that's harsh. But the thing is that when you do abominable things, you're already destroying the land. Okay, here it says, "They will know that I am the Lord when I make the land desolate." What God is telling me here is that, yes, God is making it desolate, but the people have first made it desolate. People are bringing forth destruction. Truth be told, God created mankind, not anything else. And we are beautifully and phenomenally made. We're not just mind and body, but we have spirit, we have soul. We are created in the likeness of God the Almighty. The likeness and the image of God. And there is absolutely nothing that can replace God, that can substitute God, that can destroy God. And we are made in the image of excellence. And we need to awaken to that excellency. See, a king and queen, they're not going to deter their excellency and their royalty. They're going to hold it upon high. They're going to protect it and protect their tomorrow. And so this is why they want us to fall asleep to that. They want us to be in doubt and in low self-esteem and low confidence and value things that are worthless. Because really it's trying to bring an end to a kingdom. And trying to bring an end to your true, original selves. Destroying at the DNA with such solutions. They know what they're doing. The question is do we? And this is why in the Bible, God says that we should not put abominable things in our body. Because it's destroying us from the inside out. Let's go to Daniel, chapter 12, verse 11. Now, there will be some that are in agreement with this. And you're for God's divine plan. And there will be probably many that will not. But again, this is about you going within and disconnecting from the world and connecting to God Almighty. And not only is God remembering His promises, but it's about us remembering who we are. Okay? So, Daniel chapter 12 verse 11 reads, from the time the daily sacrifice is abolished and the abomination of desolation is set up, there will be 1,290 days. Let's go to 9. Wait, let's go to 8. I heard but did not understand. So I asked, my Lord, what will be the outcome of these things? He said, go on your way, Daniel, for the words are secret and sealed until the time of the end. Many will be purified, cleansed, and refined, but the wicked will act wickedly. None of the wicked will understand, but those who have insight will understand. From the time the daily sacrifice is abolished and the abomination of desolation is set up, there will be 1,290 days. Happy is the one who waits and reaches 1,335 days. But as for you, go on your way to the end. You will rest, and then you will stand to receive your allotted inheritance at the end of days. You see, as the abominations are set up, the wicked will not understand the words of God. They will not hold it on high. Because guess what? They have all these other idols held on high. Here it shows that it is for a time frame. Okay? Let's go to Luke chapter 16 verse 15. And it reads, well, let's go to 14. And it says, the Pharisees who were lovers of money were listening to all these things and scoffing at him. And he told them, you are the ones who justify yourselves in the sight of others, but God knows your hearts. For what is highly admired by people is revolting in God's sight. And so it's like, man, how does God view these days? So here we're looking into Luke chapter 16 verse 15. We're starting at 14, and it says, the Pharisees who were lovers of money. So, you know, in being lovers of money, they already put that on a pedestal. And so it's so interesting because, as brought out earlier in reference to the witnesses, they felt tormented. And so when the witnesses, when they are going to be, or when they are speaking upon things that are abominable to God, they're going to scoff at them. And when the witnesses are brought to death, they will celebrate. And it's the very same thing that they did to Christ. And that's why he said, he told them, you are the ones who justify yourselves in the sight of others. And so we see it in this day. It's like people, they're not saying anything. It's almost like being bullied. Where instead of standing up for what they believe is right, you know, there's a major imbalance going on. It's like, for the sake of being inclusive, quote unquote, they have edged out. Inclusion is supposed to be a balance where all people are involved. But that's the point. It's edging out God. And that's, sadly, this is why it's Sodom and Egypt. That is the great city. Here we have Revelation 17:5. As they edge out God and they're going, you see, there's no, what we're seeing is, for a while, there was people riding the fence. Some over here, some over there, some in between, right? But nowadays, that's not the case. You're either for God and against the world, or you either against God and for the world. And it's so interesting is that Satan, he doesn't want people that's going to ride the fence. Either you're either for the world and against God, or you're for God and against the world. There's no in between. Revelation 17 verse 5 is our last scripture. Actually, no, it's not. Revelation 17 verse 5. And it reads, on her forehead was written a name, a mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes, and of the detestable things of the earth. That was on her forehead. Let's go a little more. Let's go to 3. Actually, let's go to chapter 17, verse 1, where it's entitled, The Woman and the Scarlet Beast. Then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and spoke with me. Come, I will show you the judgment of the notorious prostitute, who is seated on many waters. The kings of the earth committed sexual immorality with her, and those who live on the earth became drunk on the wine of her sexual immorality. Then he carried me away in the spirit to a wilderness. I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was covered with blasphemous names and had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was dressed in purple and scarlet, adorned with gold, jewels, and pearls. She had a golden cup in her hand, filled with everything detestable and with the impurities of her prostitution. On her forehead was written a name, a mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and of the detestable things of the earth. Verse 6 says, Then I saw the woman was drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the witnesses to Jesus. When I saw her, I was greatly astonished. And as we see Not only is this blasphemous, as brought out in verse 5, it's full of prostitution. 2020, a lot of people were seeing things about themselves that they didn't thought was there, for the sake of money, for the sake of having materials. I was even upset because I wanted to bring forth my spa, which is far infrared, right? And I put it on Craigslist. And I figured, you know what, these times are not going to break me. When the going gets tough, the tough gets going. Right? And so I put my ad in there, and I was nervous, but I put my ad on there, and I was just hoping that, you know, there would be people that actually do want healing. And sadly enough, I got emails, I got responses, but they wanted love me long time massages. They were not respecting my business. So I had to change my wording. And then once I did that, there was no responses. And I did get one response, but my intuition, I prayed. This is why it's so important to pray. So I prayed and I talked about it with my sons. And I didn't do it. And you know, when you hold on to integrity and honor, it's not just through words, it's through actions. And it actually keeps you in safety. And so, it is sad, you know. I put it on, I had Infinite Miracles and, you know, trying to reach out in that way, and still much disrespect. So, but there are many people who, for the sake of money, decided to prostitute themselves. Men and women. And it is indeed sad. Because a lot of illnesses came from that as well. Not just the Dalvik. And so it's like when we look towards the world and its ways and sell ourselves short, what are we doing for our tomorrow? You know, here, the reason why I said that that's not the last scripture is because I wanted to bring about Yeshua. So Yeshua, which is Jesus the Christ. There was an account in the Bible brought out in Luke chapter 4 verse 38 to 41. And it was when, well, let's turn to it. Luke chapter 8, 38 to 41. And it says, let me make sure. Luke chapter 4. Oh my gosh. Let me see. What was that about? Look at it later. But Luke chapter 4. Thirty 38 to 41. Healing at Capernaum. After he left the synagogue, he entered Simon's house. Simon's mother, which is also known as Peter, in-law, was suffering from a high fever, and they asked him about her. So he stood over her and rebuked the fever, and they left her. She got up immediately and began to serve them. When the sun was setting, all those who had anyone sick with various diseases brought them to him. As he laid his hands on each one of them, he healed them. Also demons were coming out of many, shouting and saying, "You are the Son of God." But he rebuked them and would not allow them to speak, because they knew he was the Christ. Here we see how God sent us a healer, Yeshua. A healer, a teacher, sacrificial lamb. When he was here, he rebuked illness. He leaned over and didn't rebuke the body, but rebuked that of which brought forth the fever. So, because I did a video about this, about a fever, and what's actually taking place, because the body is phenomenal. So when there is bacteria or a virus in the body, and it throws off its balance, because the body is about maintaining balance. And so when there's an imbalance, the body works towards heating up the body to destroy that bacteria. And so the fever that was present was the body doing its thing and bringing forth balance back into the body. Okay? And so when Jesus leaned over, he rebuked that of which was causing the fever, which obliterated the fever, so that she can be able to help them with food, be hospitable. Okay? And so, as we see the earth, and we see the world, which at times can seem like a tumor, the way it's set up, it needs to be rebuked, because it's bringing forth illness to the body. Okay? We don't befriend the illness and don't clean up the body, because then what's the point of going to the hospital? If you don't eradicate the illness, then the body will always be sick. And so what's so interesting also, in the Bible, it talks about how Yeshua was very angered about when they were turning the market, well, not the marketplace, the house of God into a marketplace, into a den of thieves. And so God went in, Yeshua went in and cast out that of which was deplorable. Cleaned house. Yeshua cleaned house after they made it a den of thieves. And so the thing about it is that even in liking to our home, when we don't clean up our home, we don't dust. Like I'm looking at my fan right here and I need to dust it. But when we don't clean up our home, Then we see critters. Then we see so many different things. We're not taking out the trash. And so just in seeing our home and what we find as disgusting and deplorable, this is how God sees. When men are dressing in women's clothing and women are dressing in men, and as brought out in the Bible, when men are holding on to their tummies as if they are pregnant. This is about understanding what is abominable in God's eyes. And as we are made in the image of God, right? And in the same likeness of God, the question is, do we find it deplorable? Are we disgusted? You know? Or are we changing our own image? It's so interesting because when we look at it, humanity is changing its image. Moving away from that of which is excellent. To something else. And we have to ask ourselves, these may have been a lot of scriptures, but it's about understanding how God sees. What does God view as abominable? And what are the ending effects? See, God is infinite. The world, however, is temporary. And so when you look at that of which is infinite, we have legacy, and again, there's inheritance. But we see the direction of where the earth, where the world is taking humanity. And it's to the depths of despair. And so as you're living your life, I just ask you to really, what does God see as abominable? And which road do I want to go on? Do I want to walk down the path of righteousness? Or am I walking into a burning building? See, the thing about it is that there's only one path that leads to everlasting life, that leads to legacy and inheritance in future generations. And the other path is leading to desolation. The choice is yours. Have a beautiful and wonderful day. God bless.